Mind Earth, Season 1, Peru. Episode 10, Journey of a Sun God. The journey from Lake Titicaca up to Cusco has been a long time in the making. Here at Mind Earth, we've been trying to piece together the journey that Pachacamac, Viracocha, or Inti, and his children took from Lake Titicaca to Cusco.
Taita intis bawang kurata hori tagliata huikusha. Inaspas taita inti nisha maipin liaktata hespichinata tarinaikichik. Maipin chay hori tagliata pampama ustuikunja chaypin liaktataja ruanalla.
After a while, the Inca and his wife took a long journey to find the perfect place for his people to settle. At every stop, they stuck one of their father's golden rods in the earth. Each golden rod would be a symbol for his people to build a city. When they reached the valley of Huanacari, the golden rod sank into the ground and disappeared.
Josoka mas panitura wawankuna hamorhaku. Inaspas tagliaja liuta pampamang ustuikuru.
Inca decided that here should be the site of the first temple of the sun, and that here is where he and his people would settle.
Chay punita chay wawakunda horikanchata ruwashaku.
The Inca believed they were children of the sun god Inti, who instructs them to build Cusco in the Coricancha.
It has been very difficult until this point to find the route that Viracocha, Inti, or Pachacamac and its children may have taken. No clear trail has presented itself. Until now. The problem was that we were following the rail system, which is usually worth investigating. But the key to unlocking the connection was to look at the river system. Synchronicity brought this idea to our attention through the amazing work of Michelle Gibson. The rivers, of course. It seems obvious now. Thank you, Michelle. In hindsight, it was unrecognized assumptions that had been restricting the connections that needed to be made. The unrecognized assumption was that rivers would flow south and west and into the Pacific. Everything in the west of Andes basically does, but everything just north of Lake Titicaca and from around Cusco and through the Sacred Valley flows north for quite some time before taking a turn to the east, connecting to the Amazon River, then east out to the Atlantic. We mapped the river system on Google Earth, placed the ancient sites on top of the map, and they lit up like lights on a Christmas tree. Voila, the connection. Pachacamac, Viracocha, Inti, the creator god, didn't take the train. He went down the river system. And one can now argue he wasn't marking settlements along the way. He was marking gold processing facilities. Until finally, the golden rod sank into the ground at Sacsayhuaman, Cusco. There has been considerable debate as to how to best go about presenting the stone circular structures found on the rivers running up and through Cusco. Each of these ancient sites is remarkable in its own right and could merit an episode on their own. To show every ancient stone structure that exists here in Cusco region is impossible. There are too many. Even to show each site is to the point of becoming overwhelming. The scale and scope of what we are dealing with here begins to hit home. The number of sites and the amount of evidence that seems to be presenting itself is staggering.
It's a dangerous business, Frodo. Going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Let's go. We will fly by the first 5 or 6 sites using Google Earth, and then return to look at some of the details. These first few stops don't have names. They are not recognized sites. However, they are ancient. They are constructed stone walls, circular enclosures without entrances. These are not unique and can be found all throughout Peru. And they have a remarkable resemblance to the stone structures that Anne Kirchner was showing us in South Africa. Could these be gold settling tanks? Then to a site, Paris Pancha. Multiple circular stone structures litter this hilltop. Again, we can see this walled construction connecting them. Already at our second site, we can see the significance of what we're looking at here. Stone-walled structures litter this site. And right up the river, Megalithia. This site has been cleaned up and will be found on tourist guidebooks. Let's go back and look at a few of these sites. It would be a rare guidebook indeed that would list this as a point of interest. What is meant by that is that most guidebooks won't even list this one as a site of interest. There are so many of these in the area that it may not even be worth the time to go visit. Yet, these ruins are spectacular and they tell a story. There are multiple large circular stone structures here, not listed as chupas and not listed as dwellings. So what are they? Tres Cañones, a remarkable site with geological formations that almost defy the imagination. Right away, we come across 2 astonishing ancient sites, Tacarachulu, then down to Mokalakta, complete with a scattering of large cylindrical structures that could be gold processing tanks, most of them on plateaus and sloping down hillsides. The river along this section looks suspiciously carved, manipulated as if to enhance the gold mining procedure. The hole in this sealed room looks more like a drain than a fire pit. Here we get a real indication that this is not a fire pit. It is a large cavity connected to tunnels and passageways underneath. Another Google Earth flyby. First, the Titicaca gold mine. This is a known gold mine in the region to remind us that this is gold territory. Then over to Catamarca. In Catamarca we'll see aqueducts connecting to the stone circular structures found there. And then finally downriver to another unknown complex. Could not find the name, could not find any information on it on Google, but there it is. Spectacular, really. Catamarca, another site similar to the ones we've just seen, is interesting because it has clear evidence of drainage canals or drainage systems coming out of the large cylindrical stone structures, which we've been arguing are potential gold processing tanks. We can clearly see that these are not fire pits at the bottom of these structures. There are deep holes that connect to the channels leading out of the structures. It begs the question, were the kivas in Mesa Verde properly excavated? If their assumption was that they were fire pits, they may well have stopped excavating well before discovering that they extended down and connected underneath. We'll stop calling them fire pits. They are clearly not. And to use this word only perpetuates an incorrect assumption. I won't call them drains either, but clearly something has been engineered here with some purpose. Before heading upriver, let's zoom out and get our bearings. We'll zoom back in, look at Constancia copper mine, and then over to an ancient site which is truly astonishing. At this point, one hardly knows what to say. It is called Reichi Temple. The guidebooks describe this as a ceremonial site used to worship the sun god, Viracocha. And the large cylindrical stone structures, they don't even call them dwellings, they call them storehouses. This is obviously more than just a ceremonial site. It is constructed with intent and engineered for purpose. Recent excavation efforts have revealed interesting findings. Including aqueducts, which connect the circular stone structures underneath. We will try to reach out to the organization responsible for the excavation. Faulty assumptions can lead to biased excavation efforts, and potential evidence that may have been there for thousands of years may irrevocably be lost. Now armed with information and insight from Mined Earth, the ancient site of Reichi Temple drives home the fact that these sites are connected, not only here in Peru, but across the planet. We'll zoom over to yet another unnamed site that we have found on Google Earth that has circular stone structures atop a plateau. And yet another interesting ancient site without a name. And another. We'll zoom out to get our bearings. Then we'll come back to an ancient site called Tipon, which is known for its aqueducts and water control systems. Highly engineered, purposefully built. Again, heading down the river system, we end up at Tipon, known for its aqueducts. This one's over 2 kilometers long. These aqueducts are not unique to this site. In fact, one very important idea that has not been examined yet is the notion that the Inca, as well as the Pueblo Indians, and we will soon see almost every culture that's associated with these large cylindrical stone structures, have also demonstrated mastery in water management. Almost always, there is evidence of aqueduct construction and water diversion to these sites. It is almost exclusively written that this was for agricultural purposes, which may be part of it, but having a constant source of flowing water would absolutely expedite any sort of mining operation. One after another, these sites line up, one seeming more spectacular than the next. These landscapes look masterfully constructed and unique. We will soon see that they are engineered, but they are not unique. Another Google Earth zoom over to the massive ancient site of Pisac. What jumps right at you at Pisac are the terraces. These terraces are truly amazing. They have been reconstructed and cleaned up so that they are now on the main tourist attraction list. However, that does not distract from their magnitude. The current narrative and guidebooks will tell us that what we're looking at are agricultural terraces, although many of these terraces are built precariously on the top of very steep slopes and difficult to reach places. With so much fertile land below, it begs the question, why would you go through so much trouble to get minimal planting area return? We have the terraces, definitely. But we also have the tanks, large cylindrical stone structures. They can be found all over the Pisac ruins. Pisac is huge. There isn't just one site per se. There's many different sites all in this area. And as we start going through them, we start to see that there's layers of different types of architecture. We see the newer architecture on top of some older polygonal structures. Again, the polygonal masonry, although more technically advanced, is claimed to be older, much older, than the other rock formations we see. And then there's some really ancient stone that goes beyond the polygonal masonry, like this example found in Pisac. And as for water management, it's here too. There's canals and channels and aqueducts that are so well built that they still bring water through these complexes thousands of years later. Some of these aqueducts end up in pools, which would be great for gold settling, and some end up at the structures that we claim are tanks, which would be great for gold leaching. And while we're here, we do have to remember that when the Spanish came, there was gold here. Lots of gold. This is for sure one of the jewels of this sacred valley. And if any site screams out, "I'm a mine," it's Pisac. We'll finish looking at Pisac for now and continue downriver. We'll look at some of the smaller sites along the way. However, smaller, still just as impressive, and as we'll see, just as mysterious. Huqui Cusco. Cusco in Quechuan means navel. Huqui Cusco, little navel. Machacuco, another ancient site with terraces, although these terraces are somewhat different than the rest. Might be worth a look later. If you go to Cusco, you probably won't go to Chinchero. However, any other place in the world, this would be a top quality priority stop for sure. And some of the engineered landscaping nearby is also worth coming back to look at. Pucupacara, another interesting site with what look like tanks or pits at the bottom of a channel. A quick shot of Tambo Machi. Again, the stonework, polygonal masonry, canals, water movement, it's all there. And then we'll zoom over to Kenko. From the air, this site does not look like much. However, once we're on the ground, we see it for what it is. This stone is some of the most mind-boggling, baffling construction I have ever seen. I have nothing in my past repertoire to account for what I'm looking at. It truly is fascinating. When it comes to Kenko, all bets are off. Something special is going on here. And from Kenko, we'll zoom over to a place called Sayhuite. Sayhuite. It's an obscure site as far as Peru goes, but again, some of the most bizarre, interesting, and mysterious stonework to be found on the planet is here. Just sitting at one of these sites is this. It goes beyond anything that I can explain.
Go for it. Okay, I'm going to pour water. There is a bowl in the top, the size of a soup bowl, or a little bigger. Pour the water in and see where it moves. Here it comes.
Okay, I'm not seeing any from over here.
It's just puddling here. You have to have a lot more water than that. Like some more? Yeah, pour some more. Just pour it all. Let's just see. Okay, I'll tell you, stop there and let's pour some. Here it comes. Just let this one go for a minute. Let's pour it in the other bowl to your left. Is there another bowl over there to your left? There's a channel right here. Okay, let's try that one. It's coming down in two different directions. Yeah, it's a channel. It's not a bowl. Oh, here it comes. It collects here.
The other one's still flowing.
We discovered that water flows downhill.
Wow, it's just amazing.
So it puddles there for some reason.
But all right.
And here it comes. Down into two places it splits. Yeah. We're going to try it on the flat place there.
Okay, we'll do this one.
Yeah, let's try that. Oh, it's just, that's not doing, that's fine. It does flow, but...
Also at the Sayhuite site, we see examples of the very ancient stonework found in the Cusco area. And down the slope from this megalithic rock are the staircases. What they are is a series of pools and fountains descending down this hill. This would act superbly as a gold settling system. Is that what it was? From Sayhuite to Choqquequirao. Choqquequirao is said to be the last Inca stronghold, the fortress where the last rebel group held out for 34 years against the Spanish conquistadors. Of course, this is from the history books that the Spanish wrote. It's also said that in the early 1900s, Hiram Bingham was invited to the Cradle of Gold. Hiram passed it off as being a frontier fortress for the last Inca city of Virabamba. The site is arguably on par with Machu Picchu, however it is much more off the beaten track, requiring multiple day hikes to access it. It has the makings about it to be an awesome gold processing center, complete with water management aqueducts. large watertight structures enclosed in their own yard could make excellent leaching tanks. The construction of these terraces, on arguably the most treacherous and exposed part of the mountain, is a terrible decision if your intent was to maximize agricultural area. The terraces below the structure, which the water channels are leading into, look more like settling pools, which would make sense if you were mining gold. Nuestra Hispana, although not technically on the Urubamba River, is included because the rock formation here is so bizarre. There is no explanation as to why it is here, how it got here, who did it. It's unknown how it was carved, and yet here it is, and it seems inevitably tied up with this story. Way up high on the dusty Cusco plateau, Moray looks more like an open pit mine than most. One of the first images we saw on mined earth was Moray, juxtaposed against Homestake Gold Mine, South Dakota. Are you still sticking with the agriculture terrace story? Could this be a gold processing center, situated high on top of a mined cliff? Regardless, absolutely breathtaking. Nuapa Iglesia was one of the first sites we visited in Peru. We parked the car at the side of the road. There was no parking lot, no signs, no admission, no people. We climbed a short terrace section of hillside to find a carved cave, this blue andesite rock at the front, and a smooth granite wall carved doorway within. And from here, a short Google flight over to Ollantaytambo. Every time I come back to these sites, I see something different. Ollantaytambo. I've looked at these pictures hundreds of times, but now I'm coming in with the Tombs and Temples, Tanks and Plants episode. I'm looking for tanks and I'm looking for plants, and it looks like I may have found a few. Then, after spending time with Walter in Mesa Verde, I began looking for anomalies or things that just don't make sense. And here's one. They call these storehouses. I'm not sure what you would store in here. They're so tall and skinny. And in terms of access, I think this is what you would call a fail. Who would put storehouses in the middle of a cliff? So what are they? I've seen this kind of feature on terraces before. Machucolca. This just looks like a weird way to build terraces. A side-by-side comparison shows the uncanny resemblance of the construction. The terraces at Machucolca look like buried storehouses, but that's not what they were called. So what are these things doing? Well, they're in descending order, so maybe they're filtering. And from different angles, they don't look like storehouses at all, but they look like teeth that are filters on the side of the hill. It looks as though you could push down rocks and they would filter over these teeth, with the smaller debris falling into the channels of the storehouse rooms. Could these structures be acting like giant filters? It's not too hard to imagine it acting as a filter for the rock being pushed from above. Could they have carved or mined out this sort of circular area and pushed it over and down through these filters? Maybe. It looks like a partial storehouse here. And if you didn't know any better, it kind of looks like a landslide may have ruined what was once a good filtering chute. I wonder if their storehouse is buried under here. Let's take a minute and fly back to Machu Picchu. It's just on the other side of what I call the Cusco Terrace. Boy, this thing sure looks flat compared to everything in the area. Remember, this is where the last golden rods sank into the ground. Could the area have been mined? Could the mountain peak above Machu Picchu have been flattened and pushed over the edge? Down over the filters of the terraces below? It's a mined earth work in theory, this idea of building terrace-like structures to process mined ore from above. Let's look across the valley here at Ollantaytambo to elaborate on this theory. Primarily what we're seeing are reinforced terraces built at the base of this rocky outcrop. We are told that these have been built for agricultural purposes. With Google Earth, we have the ability to see the whole river valley. There's quite a bit of flat and fertile land being farmed in these mountain valleys. This is an awful lot of farmland, especially compared to the size of the terraces at Ollantaytambo. Both upriver and downriver. Questions spring to life. Did the river valley always have flat, fertile land along it? And then, in addition to this, there is an amazing amount of agricultural terraces. The terraces at sites like Ollantaytambo and Pisac seem like afterthoughts compared to the number and sheer area of terraces that have been built into these mountains. There are an awful lot of terraces here. How long have these agricultural terraces been here? And what sort of population size was this farmland having to feed? The answers are surprising and have repercussions. The wide river plain and all these terraces have been around for a long time, hundreds, if not thousands of years. As for the number of people, it is estimated that at the height of the Inca Empire, around the 15th century, the population peaked at around 22 million people. However, the Inca Empire then stretched from Ecuador through Peru, Bolivia, Chile, and Argentina. Peru's population today is about 31 million. That alone is 150% larger than in the past. If we incorporate the population of where the Inca Empire boundaries lay, today's population eclipses the mark of the past at 170 million. That's almost 8 people now for every 1 in the past. We will let these ideas sink in. Flat, fertile river valleys, terraces everywhere, and large cylindrical stone structures populating ancient sites built periodically up and along the river system. You begin to ask questions. Many of these terraces are being farmed today. However, many are not. Ollantaytambo is not. Pisac isn't either. And making new ones today does not seem to be a priority, even at an 8-to-1 population increase. Assuming they may have needed this extra little bit of farmland in the past, it would seem like the location choice for these terraces was not well conceived. Again, it does not make sense. It seems like a disproportionate amount of work for minimal returns. Ollantaytambo is carved into solid rock. Huge terraces have been built, incorporating the use of massive stones and polygonal masonry. Why go through all the trouble building these elaborate structures in arguably the most hostile local terrain? Even with the plethora of terraces we see today, there's still plenty more accessible area that would have been better suited. Nevertheless, this was the site they chose. And build it they did. An incredible engineering feat, unsurpassed even by today's standards. I don't think we're looking at agricultural terraces. If not agricultural terraces, what are they? The answer seems to leap out at us. Could these be the remnants of an ancient strip mining operation? This is what strip mines look like. But why the elaborate reinforcement of the terraces? Strip mining would not require it, at least not how we strip mine today. Enter mined earth. These are not agricultural terraces, these are mining terraces. And not just any run-of-the-mill mining terraces. The run-of-the-mill terraces are the other ones that are all around through the valleys. Could these all really be mine terraces? The scope of what we may be dealing with begins to hit home. There are terraces like this all over the Andean mountains. We'll come back to this idea. The rocks in Ollantaytambo are different. The rocks on which Machucoca, Pisac, and the rest of the ancient sites we're looking at are different. The sites that contain large circular stone structures are different. They are not just mining terraces. No, the sites we've been looking at are special. What we may be looking at are the remnants of a sophisticated, engineered, and expertly designed gold mining and gold ore production facility. Gold processing centers? If so, how could these Ollantaytambo terraces have been used to assist in any gold mining process? Here's a possibility. They may be acting like a giant sluice box. Could they have used this to pour water and ore slurry over top of these stairs so that the heavier elements, like gold, would fall out by gravity as you work your way down? This is what you call a Pandora's box. Once it's opened, you can't close it. If this is true, the repercussions become staggering. It will be impossible to look at a step pyramid the same way again. Perhaps they did serve mining purposes as massive sluicing machines. This idea of ancient steps being used as gold separators is an idea I've heard before. The late Marshall Clarfeld introduced it to me through his books. He doesn't really elaborate on the process, but he does allude to the idea that the ancients were using steps and step pyramids to process and extract gold. Staggering. Examining the Google Earth images, it seems like the mountain above the terraces at Ollantaytambo, at least in this section, have been scooped out or chunked away. Could it have been mined? Could the bottom have been strip mined first and then reinforced? Reinforced and engineered to serve as a massive mechanism to either filter or reduce the gold ore above it? We have seen evidence to suggest that this is at least plausible, and just as likely quite possible. Whoever built these structures were master builders, unequaled now or since.
This stone, because we can measure the volume, we can measure the height, the width, and the depth, we know the density of this stone is about 165 pounds per cubic foot. So this stone alone weighs 65 tons. 2/3 of the way up this mountain is where the quarry is that this stone came from. So they had to hew the stone in rough form from the quarry. They had to move it down the mountain to the valley floor, across the valley floor, up on top of this hill, shape it, and put it into place. So originally it might have weighed 100 tons.
What were they doing with these massive stones? One can only speculate. And Mind Earth will investigate. One would expect that if these builders put their minds to mining, as we at Mind Earth suggests they did, that they would be miners with efficiencies built in, double or triple uses for everything, terraces that were mined and then used for agriculture, or, as we now conjecture, to assist to further process the ore above or around it. Aqueducts that direct water to both agricultural areas as well as mining facilities. Flooding fields to create ammonia, as well as to rejuvenate the land to grow crops. Food staples that grow in these flooded conditions, like potatoes and lima beans, that feed your slave army, and also provide cyanide necessary for mining. Layers upon layers. Mind Earth will continue to investigate. Sneak Peek, Season 1, Episode 11. The hopeful conclusion to Journey of a Sun God. It has been a long time coming, but we are off, from Lake Titicaca to Cusco. We discovered the key to the journey and followed the Creator God and his children downriver. On cue, as if marked by the touch of the God's golden rod, sites littered with large cylindrical structures began appearing at regular intervals. Exploring the landscape, discovering engineered structures, walls, and terraces. Each site profound and resounding, each adding complexity and layers, as we begin to unravel the unexplained, the unknown, the hidden or forgotten, ancient mysteries of who we are and where we came from. We'll continue our journey upriver, following the trail of Pachacamac. We will visit a few more large cylindrical stone structures at Fortaleza Cuelpa. Tanks everywhere! And where do 48,000 meters of aqueduct lead? You'll find out. Episode 10. I can't wait. Here's where they lead. They lead to a site high up in the Altiplano of the Andean Mountains in Peru. Pilcalacta. It won't be in many of your guidebooks. They may not even have tours. No wonder. No one knows what it is. Until now.